Welcome to WYSC, where we give you a quick peek at the day's top stories. I'm Julia Manchester, in for Jamal Simmons. Bernie talks immigration and rakes in donations from Latino voters. Jeff Sessions is set to announce a run for his old seat in the Senate, but will the White House support him? And tech giants are pouring billions into local politics, but why? This is why you should care. Senator Bernie Sanders released a detailed immigration plan today, vowing to undo all of President Trump's executive actions on the policy. Sanders would make undocumented immigration a civil matter and place immigration courts under the judiciary system. Here to talk more about this is Hill reporter Rafael Bernal. Thanks for being here, friend.
Thanks for having me.
So give us a detailed look at this plan and really what it means for Trump's immigration proposals if Sanders were to be elected president.
Well, starting from the broad spectrum, it's a very progressive plan. It's something that wasn't even discussed 4 years ago. It wasn't imaginable 4 years ago, even in a Democratic primary. Then it takes all of Trump's executive actions, because we have to remember Trump's actions on immigration have not been legislative, because he hasn't, even when he had control of both houses, he didn't have too much luck passing his immigration policy. So it would basically erase everything Trump has done. The first thing is it would set a moratorium on deportations until there's a complete overview of how U.S. immigration policy and enforcement are working. And then you get into the legislative side, also very progressive, and it picks up a lot of the demands of immigrant communities, Latino communities, and progressives throughout the country. And the one thing that sort of gives it a lot of a Bernie flavor is it ties it in with labor policy, and it ties it in with trade policy toward the hemisphere. And it's very much a Bernie Sanders plan. But it's very much a Bernie Sanders 2020, not a Bernie Sanders 2016 plan.
How do you think this is going to play with the Democratic base, the progressive base, and also Latino voters within the Democratic Party?
So Latino voters are probably going to like it a lot. Latino voters who are prone to supporting Bernie, who are already very progressive, are going to love it most likely. Similar to Elizabeth Warren's plan, Julian Castro, who put out a plan that they have sort of these similar baselines and sort of their flavor, sort of the way Bernie puts in the labor side. The more broad immigration activist coalition is concerned, because a lot of people believe this is not a policy you can run on in a general election, that it's too far to the left for many Americans. That remains to be seen. If you take yesterday's or the day before yesterday's elections, statewide elections, into account, it seems President Trump is scaring off a lot of the suburbs. And the one number I'd love to see polled is, why are people scared off? And a lot of, I have the impression from people I've talked to and so on, that suburban voters don't like the way Trump expresses himself on immigration. And this is something that progressives like Sanders are picking up and trying to run on and move the issue leftward entirely.
And do you think those suburban voters we talk so much about in the media, do you think they'd be on board with this plan like this that Sanders offering, or would it be too progressive for them?
Well, that's really what's going to be litigated in the election, especially if these plans make it to the general election. If these are just sort of a primary election starting off point, the risk is, of course, that Latinos won't like it when, the candidates move over toward the middle and start talking about enforcement and border and so on. But one thing that sort of the immigration world hasn't been very good at communicating to the country is you can't really up enforcement a lot more. It's been ratcheted up over 30 years, including, President George W. Bush tried to mellow it a little bit, but Presidents Clinton and Obama turned up the dial on enforcement, essentially, and they didn't really turn up the dial on fixing legal immigration. So if Sanders or Warren or possibly even Joe Biden are able to make the case to those suburban voters, like, we don't need more security, we need a working immigration system, this sort of plan might work. but it'll definitely give President Trump some very strong lines of attack that will work with his base.
Right, and I guess moving to Bernie Sanders support, particularly among the Latino community, talk to me more about that, because we've seen a lot of fundraising efforts from that community for the senator. You know, is this something that's really going to propel him forward to maybe attract more of the general Democratic electorate?
Well, Bernie Sanders, we know about the Bernie bro, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of a late 20s, socially progressive person that really believes in Bernie's approach toward an economic message. That demographically, that's replicated a lot within the Latino community because it's a younger community. Right. So you have a lot of people that are in sort of the age group that the Sanders message works for them, and that they do feel that they've been left behind economically. And as a community, they don't not only have the age group thing, but Latinos do have an unfavorable wealth gap toward other demographic groups. So he's going to keep that group. If he doesn't get the nomination, he might be able to sort of lend them over to another candidate, especially if the other candidate's progressive, something he didn't do in 2016. So one way or another, Latinos and the Latinos that support Bernie and are very strong Bernie people are going to make him a powerhouse, whether or not he wins the nomination.
Absolutely. Well, Rafael, thank you so much for all of your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Later today, former U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is set to announce he is running for his old Senate seat. The Hill's Julie Grace Brufke and Al Reaver first reported the news. Sources told them that Sessions plans to run in full support of President Trump, and he would push back against impeachment efforts. But according to their reporting, the White House might not embrace the former Alabama senator's run. A GOP operative said officials at the White House told Sessions' inner circle that they would consider the move, quote, extremely unfavorably. Sessions and Trump's relationship became tumultuous when he served as Attorney General. Sessions angered President Trump when he recused himself from the Russia investigation, after which the president asked him to leave his post. The primary race for his old seat is already crowded, with 6 others vying to go up against Democrat Doug Jones, who beat the controversial candidate Roy Moore. Republican strategists worry that given issues between Sessions and Trump, Sessions' candidacy could take the spotlight off of the national race, which they say wouldn't be good for Trump in the general election. The filing deadline to run for the Senate is tomorrow. So why should you care? Politics is full of twists and turns, and this is just the latest in a long list. As strategists point out, this could have a big impact on Trump come 2020. Some think Sessions' entry into the race could prove to be a distraction to Trump's re-election effort. We'll have an update for you tomorrow. Big tech is butting in on local politics. The Seattle Times reports that Amazon, which is headquartered in the seaport city, spent a record $1.45 million on the city council race between socialist candidate Shama Sawant and small businessman Egan O'Ryan. Amazon's reasoning? The company spokesperson said, quote, "We are contributing to this election because we care deeply about the future of Seattle. We believe it is critical that our hometown has a city council that is focused on pragmatic solutions to our shared challenges in transportation, homelessness, climate change, and public safety." Amazon is not the only big tech company spending big money on local politics. In June, Google put together a $1 billion plan to help solve the housing crisis in the San Francisco Bay Area. The plan includes a $750 million for housing commercial properties that will be used to build 15,000 homes and $250 million to build 5,000 affordable homes. And this past Monday, Apple followed suit, pledging to donate $2.5 billion to the San Francisco Bay Area. So why is big tech getting involved in the nitty-gritty of local politics, and why should you care? Well, a lot of it boils down to housing. Housing costs have skyrocketed in the areas where these tech companies have set up camp. In turn, homeless populations have also increased. In the past, tech executives have tried to avoid paying taxes aimed to help alleviate the housing crisis, but it seems that they've come to the conclusion that livable cities benefit their bottom line.
Thanks for watching Hill TV on YouTube. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we post new videos. And head to thehill.com for all the latest political news.